I'm not a nervous person.
Right.
I may be feeling it
Right.
and the nervousness is occurring around me at the time, but that's not who I am as a person. So I learned to operate on top of it.
That's really
So
cool.
as we grow older and into our adulthood, we learn to adapt, unfortunately, in many areas.
Yes.
And operate on top of those feelings, and we keep shoving them down until you start going, that's a good point. You know, it could take a complete stranger to notice it about you like that, because they're not a friend. They're not like knowing who you are, but they can just tell right away. They're like,
what is that? Why are we doing
have daddy issues?
Yeah. You're like, I do? Shoo, I thought I was faking it so well. I thought I was operating on top of it.
There you go. Exactly.
Dang it.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to Go Figure, the podcast where we cut the fluff, get real, and dive into everything fitness, health, and life. I'm Lori Fetrick, former American Gladiator Ice.
And I'm Ashley Randall, certified trainer, wellness coach, and your go-to for keeping it real about living your best life.
Here on Go Figure, we're busting myths, sharing truths, and having the conversations that make you stop and say, Go Figure.
From fitness fads to mindset shifts and everything in between, we're here for the stuff you didn't know you needed to hear.
Crushing it, stuck in a rut, or just trying to keep it together, we've been there.
So get ready to laugh, learn, and level up. This is Go Figure. Let's do this.
Welcome to Go Figure, a new podcast series here on Chillin' with Ice. This podcast is where fitness, wellness, and real talk collide. I'm your host, Lori Fetrick, along with the incredible Ashley Randall. Welcome back to Go Figure. And you know what, Ashley? You went somewhere this weekend. Tell me what you're doing. I mean, you came back all fired up and you were doing thing and posting something about inner child and trauma.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I left the Matrix. Or did I leave the Matrix or did I go into the Matrix?
I noticed you say the Matrix a lot.
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Like, I feel like this is like a simulation. Like, we live in a simulation.
So do you really actually feel this way?
No,
Okay.
I don't. Like, I don't need you guys to come for me. Yeah, like, I don't think that, like, the clouds are fake and, like, we're in the Truman Show. But I definitely...
Do you believe they're spraying our skies?
Yes.
Okay, I just needed to make sure where you're at.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Should we put our tinfoil hats on? I don't know. Like, how weird are we going to get?
Red pill, blue pill?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I went to... I don't even know what you would call it because it wasn't like a workshop. It definitely wasn't a retreat. I mean, I'm not eating.
What was the title?
Well, it was called Awaken.
Okay.
That's just what it was called. And so, yeah, it wasn't like, I mean, like I said, it wasn't what I would picture as a retreat. You know, we're not in our robes walking around like Sedona and just like, And it wasn't like a workshop where you're just like learning.
Right.
It was a mixture of both. I went in really blind. I just had seen it. I had followed this guy for a while and it came up and I was like, you know what? My birthday's this week, or prior to it, it was coming up to my birthday. And I was like,
when is your birthday?
On Thursday, on the 19th.
Okay.
Yeah, on the 19th. Yeah, so when you guys are listening to this, I will already have aged a little more. But so I just thought, you know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna see. I think we've already talked about this, but I moved home recently to live with my mom. We don't have the best relationship. And I guess to me, it just seemed like, why not?
Can I ask you one thing first before you go into the weekend? What type of relationship, without getting too deep and technical in a couple sentences, do you have with your mom?
We have a distant and very composed, masculine, unvulnerable relationship.
Wow. I
guess if I was to give it very brief. I mean, as a mother, when I was raised, my mom was loving and doted on me and took so much care of me. And I would say so feminine, but also never vulnerable, always the only provider. So lots of masculine energy. And now as adults, I would say probably for almost the last 20 years, I mean, we haven't spent more than 4 days together in probably 20 years.
4 days in 20 years, and you're now...
I'm 4 days together. I'm like consecutively. Correct.
Okay, you scared me for a minute.
Yeah, sorry,
no. You spent 4 days in the last 20 years. Okay, but that's kind of a normal thing when you get older. You don't spend a lot of time consecutively with your parents.
True.
So
but I think there's people that are like, oh, I'll go on vacation, or like I came home for a week and stayed at my parents' house.
I could never do that.
Yeah. I mean, when I moved out, that was pretty much it, you know, and even 4 days it might be a stretch. You know, if I came home for Thanksgiving or something, it was always as minimal time as I could.
God, you're
which
sounding like me.
I think is kind of fucked up, and I feel a little guilty for it, but it was, I almost felt like I had to like keep her at a distance. It's like once I got this independence, I felt like, okay, like I need to like just be strong and keep the shield up. I
So
can't
do you
need
keep,
you anymore.
is that shield like a boundary shield?
Yes.
Okay.
Like it's hard. Like there's even sometimes like that I will hug her and I'm just like, I'm hugging you. And like there isn't emotion there
Oh
because
my God, you sound like me and my mother.
yeah, mother-daughter relationships, as we will dive into, it's a very difficult relationship to navigate.
Like when my mom hugs me, she almost like backs away
Oh, okay.
and kind of pats me on the back.
Okay, see, my mom's the opposite.
She'll
She almost
grab you
wants
and
too
hold
much.
you.
Wants to
Okay.
kiss me on the cheek, wants to like hug me,
Oh,
and
so it's
I'm like,
you with the
yes, and
resistance.
I'm just like, I'm like looking around, as the room as I'm hugging her, and I'm just like, okay, and I can feel her, like almost her energy to want more is almost like a turn off.
Interesting.
It is sad. I don't want to be like that, but I feel myself, and then I'll leave. When I used to live in San Diego, I'd get in my car and drive away, and I would just leave with this guilt of like, my mom could die at any minute. I mean, we all could. And that would be my last interaction with her, was me trying to like force this distance. Like, why? Why am I trying to be so emotionally unavailable to her?
So do you think that maybe that's why this weekend kind of spoke to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to go, because again, it's like if I'm going to do it, the way I kind of described it to some of my friends is like submersion therapy. Like if I'm going to go in and literally move in with my mother, then why not do the other things? Why not address some of the other stuff, not just half-ass it? And so going in, I didn't really have a lot of expectations. And another thing that I think that's really important to say and that I took away from this weekend was, I think on some level we all have trauma. I think that the word trauma has been almost, we use it to like marginalize. Oh, well, this person was raped and, I was only yelled at by a coach. I don't really care what I shouldn't say that. I do care, but it doesn't really matter what your trauma was. It's your trauma.
It's yours. Yes.
So if all it was one day your mom spanked you in the middle of a department store, if that was gut-wrenchingly embarrassing for you, like that might have been like, that might be a thing. Listen, I was spanked in many department stores, so I'm like, I'm fine.
Okay, so you were spanked as a child.
Oh, yes.
So was I.
But then I got smart enough and I would hide in the corner and like shove myself in it so she couldn't pull me out. And so then she started washing my mouth out with soap.
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
I had that once. And that
maybe
was
had it like
the worst.
maybe 4 or 5 times. Yeah.
So your childhood growing up, your mother she was playing the mom and she was playing the dad because you did not grow up with a dad.
Right.
And so we touched on it before, and I asked you once before, did that or has that created daddy issues with you?
Right.
And you said, I'm sure it has. And so through this weekend, what did you notice that came up for you?
Yeah. So this weekend, and I've always told myself I don't have daddy issues because in my mind, daddy issues was an over-sexualization. It was sexually craving attention from men. And I never had that. But then this weekend, I realized it was almost the opposite. It was a dominance of men that became the issue, where it was like, I'm going to be so not needing you that now that has created, it's like I almost became my own daddy. Like I was my own masculine energy for so long that now to have that in my mind, I'm like, I don't need that. Even though I think deeply it's what I've probably craved my whole entire life since I was a little girl.
Right.
But I almost like self-soothed. And instead of dating and being sexual and like, oh, this feels good, you're giving this to me. Instead, I was like, I actually don't need it. I actually want this so bad. I'm going to pretend that I don't even need it at all. I don't need your attention. I don't need your affirmations. I don't need your love. I'm going to be so removed from it that even when you do want to date me and be nice and take care of me, I'm going to still like
back off and pull away
and just be like, okay, that's fine. But like, you're going to leave. And when you leave, I'm going to be okay. So why are we here?
When this is what I find fascinating about human beings in life. We all think that we have our own private rainstorms.
Yeah.
And when you're describing what you're describing right now, I grew up with a father. Okay. And yet at the same time, Um, I always want, I'll be honest. Sometimes I come back and go, why am I gay? What happened?
Yeah.
I wasn't sexually molested or
Right.
raped or anything. I had a great relationship with my dad. Okay, so that's what I tell myself. I had a great relationship with my dad. But to be quite honest with you, we didn't have a relationship at all. You know, my dad was very quiet. You know, he was we did things together, but we never talked.
Right.
You know, that's the
Right.
interesting thing. You know, we were in the garage together, we went fishing together, but I can't tell you one time that we had a really meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
Ever.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I now relate that exactly to my mom. And I had a friend who was a therapist for 13 years, and we were talking one day, and I said, you know, my mom was a great mom, da da da. And she said, what made her a great mom? And then I thought,
You had to think about
yeah,
it. Yeah.
but I didn't
Just
have to.
because maybe you weren't molested, you weren't raped, you know, all
Correct.
these traumatic,
Correct.
deep traumatic things. You're like,
Correct.
oh, she was a great mom. See,
Right.
that's the same thing
She
I
took
think.
care of me. We went on trips together. I had a good time.
I
She
had a roof
exactly.
over my head. She
Right.
fed me.
Yeah.
What do I
mean,
have to bitch about?
Right. But then to what you just said, then when I really look back at it, and yeah, my mom and I, you know, I always make this joke. There's a line in a movie where the girl's not close with her father, and someone asks her, they're like, oh, like, are you and your father close? And she's like, yeah, our DNA like match. And I'm like, yeah, like, but there's a part of me that feels like that's almost how it is with my mom and I. Like, yes, our DNA matches. And yes, we lived together under the same roof for 21 years. And yes, we spent a shit ton of time together because it was just us. There was no other option. There was no buffer. There was no brother or sister or anything. So are we close? Yes. But are we close? No. Did we have deep, meaningful conversations? Did I cry when I got broken up with? Did I express, you know, hurt or what? No. Did she do the same thing? No. So we were like this going through life, but we weren't connected.
Right.
And I think that as I've gotten older is what I've realized. Oh, there's a big difference.
There's a big, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of marriages that are like that, where they're
Yes.
like, oh, we've been married for 35 years. And it's like, but are you connected?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or are you just living under the same roof, going to carpool together, and, you know, like, is that what we're
Yeah.
doing? We're sleeping in the same bed because that's like, or are we connected?
There's, speaking of lines in movie, I remember watching a movie once and
Just one time she watched a movie.
shut up, whatever. There was this movie, and I can't remember which movie it was, and they had just had a baby, and the husband goes into the hospital, in the room, picks up the child, and looks at him like this, like Simba, and goes like this: "We're gonna fuck you up."
Ain't that the truth?
Amen. Absolutely, because we have to remember our parents are human beings as well,
Yes.
you know, and they're just trying their best. And some of them are really fucking kids
Yes.
up. I mean, I had to look back on some things, and some of my friends brought some things to my attention, like my domineering, my I don't think I'm controlling, but I want to be controlled as much as I possibly can. And I have to look back on why. And it's funny because I'll tell these stories about my mom and how she was in this church and it was a cult, and that she controlled the household with this church. We didn't celebrate Christmas. We didn't
wow.
celebrate Easter. We didn't celebrate birthdays.
Wow.
I could not eat any cold cereal sugars in the morning, thank God now. But, you know, we didn't have these things.
Right.
We couldn't eat lard. Everything was around the church. So whatever lard was in was like donuts and fun things.
Yeah.
And so she was so controlling with me as a child that apparently I had made a decision in my life that I was never going to be controlled like that again.
Okay.
And so therefore, when I pick my partners, I'm always the controlling, domineering one.
Because you still need the control. Like, I think that's huge what you just said. It's oftentimes the people that are controlled, there's a sense of comfort in being controlled. So then now you become the control to still have the comfort, because you can't both be chaos. That would be so uncomfortable for you. So you're like, I don't want you to control me, but I'm still in control because that makes me feel safe. And it's like, oh, yeah, we're all fucked up.
We're all fucked up.
We're all super fucked up.
And we're still dealing with this.
Yes.
In our later in life.
For
And so,
sure.
you know, there are so many people out there who go, it's just me.
Yeah.
No, it's not just you.
Right.
And when you hear stories like this, sometimes people can relate to these stories and go, oh my God, this isn't just me. This
Correct.
is what happens.
Correct.
you know, and then
Correct.
you can kind of start working on it. So tell me a little bit more about the weekend.
I mean, just to touch really quick even on what you said and not to get too heavy, but there was probably a little over 600 people there.
That's
There's
good
a lot.
amount.
It's a good amount.
Yeah.
And I would say, I'm making this up. Let's just say 400 women.
Okay.
Okay. So in a room of 400 women and men, there was 6, I think, that stood up to tell their stories about having an abortion.
Okay.
Now, when you think about that, that's not crazy because I think the stats are like much tighter than that.
Of course.
But I think people think that they don't know anybody that has ever had an abortion.
Really?
Or that has had trauma, like kind of like what you were saying. Like we all think we have this own thing. And I thought that's only the 6 women that felt comfortable standing up in this room to say it.
Absolutely.
What about the maybe double that are sitting in their chairs just grateful that this person is kind of telling their story?
Yeah.
That is like, oh, I thought I was the only one, but now she just told it. And now so yeah, to your point, like we all think that like, oh, this has only ever happened to me. And it's like, no, it's actually happened to so many people, whatever it might be. And I think if we can be, I think that was one of the things too from this weekend. Like if we can just be more coming from like our heart and not so focused like on our head, which is very ego, that and like have compassion and understanding that like we're all going through shit.
Yeah.
And whether that is shit that we went through as a child, that we teenager, or that we're still trying to figure out, I just think it's just so important. And to your point too about like the parents, there's a lot of people that don't address it. There's a lot of people
absolutely.
that don't address it and they just keep repeating the cycle. And it's real easy to look back and be like, oh, well, that's why because versus, okay, well, this happened. Like for me, okay, my grandfather wasn't around much for my mom. He wasn't emotionally available. He didn't provide great for my grandmother, like emotionally. So then my mom goes and gets married to a man who's controlling and wants to like do all the things because in a way, I think my mom didn't have that. He was controlling but absent. So then she wanted a husband that was like almost overcompensated that.
Right.
Okay, so then she leaves that, gets a new one. Same thing. Still avoidant, not around, in the movie industry, all the things. So now we fast forward, then she ended up having me as a single parent. Then you fast forward to me, and now I'm thinking, I have to break that cycle. Because her cycle was, she didn't have it, she tried to find it, so then she went without. And now I'm like, well, I didn't have it, so what do? Do I just keep not having it? Or do I have to somehow heal that wound to find a partner so that if I do have a child, I'm not just continuing
How
to
old are you?
repeat the cycle? When this airs, I'll be 39. But don't worry, my mom had me when I was 40. There's still time.
I think that I think what happens is just especially for me, I have learned to my coping mechanism is to operate on top of.
Okay.
I just operate on top of whatever is happening.
What do
And
you mean by that?
Operating on top of meaning like if I'm feeling a certain way, if I'm feeling, operating on top of it's interesting. If you're feeling nervous,
Okay.
I'll make it simple, kind of like if you're feeling nervous inside, you're having that anxiety inside of you. What I do is I actually talk to myself and go, you're not a nervous person.
Yes.
This is not who you are. You just need to relax. I'll put it out there, and whatever I'm doing, I just operate on top of it.
I love that.
It's that underlining. It may be there, but I tell my, because I'm not a nervous person.
Right.
I may be feeling it,
Right.
and the nervousness is occurring around me at the time, but that's not who I am as a person. So I learned to operate on top of it.
That's really
So
cool.
as we grow, what I meant by that is as we grow older and into our adulthood, we learn to adapt, unfortunately, in many areas.
Yes.
And operate on top of those feelings, and we keep shoving them down until you start going, that's a good point. It could take a complete stranger to notice it about you like that,
Right.
Because they're not a friend. They're not like knowing who you are, but they can just tell right away. They're like,
what is that? Why are we
you
doing
have
that?
daddy issues.
Yeah. You're like, I do? Shoo, I thought I was faking it so well.
Right.
I thought I was operating on top of it.
There you go. Exactly. Dang it. So, after this weekend, I mean, is this I'm going to call it a course.
Okay.
Can I call it a course?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this a course that you would actually recommend to a lot of people because you came out of it and you actually got a lot out of it?
100,000%. 1,000%. I mean, I have someone who's been in and out of therapy my whole life. You know, even from a really, really young age. I think my mom kind of put me in there more so just like as a sounding board for her. Like, am I fucking this kid up? Like, can someone else validate?
Somebody else take care of
is
it.
she crazy? Because I don't, so to me, that's not a strange thing. I think for some people, that's just still such a very taboo thing, which I think is unfortunate.
Therapy?
Yeah, I think it's
think
unfortunate.
therapy is getting, it's a more broad, I want to say it's becoming more acceptable to where people are talking about it.
It is. And I wish it would be even, I'm hopeful that it just continues down that path. You know, one of my good friends who is a therapist, her whole thing is like, would you wait until your roof is actually leaking and ruining your house and your furniture to fix it? Or would you just stay on top of your roof so it never leaks? Like, that's what therapy is. Like, we don't need to wait until the whole roof caves in and it's a shitstorm. Like,
and you go, what's wrong with me?
Right. Like, hey, let's just tend to the roof all the time so that it never gets there.
Yeah.
But I would recommend this. One of the biggest reasons is because you can go in with an intention. You can go in with a wound, I think, that you're looking to heal or to bring more light to. But you can also kind of just go in and just see and hear and feel and let your body navigate that. Which I think is we need to get more in tune with.
Do you enjoy those kind of, you seem like you would enjoy those kind of things
like
because
what?
It's about you.
What are we like? Oh, I would enjoy it because it's about me.
Well, you know what I'm saying? It's like I would enjoy a weekend like that.
Okay.
Because it's like I could sit there and go, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me too. Oh, that's me. You know, kind of thing to where it's like, and then you kind of come out knowing yourself a little bit better.
Yes. I am a very introspective person. I also am very intrigued about other people. Like, I want to psychoanalyze people. I want to know about them. Why are you doing this? Why do you do it that way? Why do I do it this way? So yeah, I mean, it definitely is something that I want to get to know myself better. I think we could all truly benefit from knowing ourselves better. I think so many of us are truly very detached from ourselves. I mean, case in point, here I am telling myself this story my whole life, essentially, since the day that programming was necessary, that I don't need a dad, that it doesn't bother me. I mean, who knows? I could have been at 6 years old and maybe someone said something to me and it hurt my feelings, but instead I was like, no, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't need this. It doesn't bother me. So for however many years I've been telling myself that, to then, and it's not like this weekend just revealed that, but it's to see that, oh, okay, actually, to your point, the operating above is beneficial, but maybe it's time to not use that programming anymore. Like, we have programming that we have used to keep us safe, to keep us protected, but do we still need to run that programming? Or can we look back and be like, hey, I think if we let this die or shifted this, we could have so many different things. Even like what you were saying about the anxious person. There's so many people and that was one of the avenues that people talked about a lot this weekend too, was finances and money and their blocks around money and their limiting beliefs around money. It's like you were saying, I'm not an anxious person. Okay, well, there's people that are like, I'm poor. I can't make money. It's only for this. Money doesn't make happiness. Okay, well, if that's the story that you have told yourself, if that's the story
you're
your
going to
parents,
continue living that story the rest of your life.
Correct.
You'll
So
never break that
maybe
story.
we just think something different.
And we start speaking something different.
Correct.
I'm
and
rich.
we start,
I'm rich in life.
yes,
I'm rich in health.
money
I'm rich
is
in
easy.
this.
Yes, you don't have to work hard to make money. Like, whatever
Right.
it is that you think negatively about it, what if we just shifted that?
And see what happens for 30
Yes.
days. Just dive deep.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you know, I
That's a
think
hard thing to do, by the way, though,
it is hard.
because we get those negative thoughts, and I call it mind fucking myself. Seriously, I
Yeah,
do. I'm
it's
sorry,
true.
but I do. Because you're constantly going over and over and over in your mind, you know, something that is happening, and even on the traumatic side of things.
Right.
And you have to break it. And
Yes.
you have to really break it, that thought process
Yes.
in your mind constantly.
Yes. And that's, I guess, why I use the reference of like the Matrix, because it's like a glitch. Like, you have to like, oh, like in that moment of like, you know, life sucks. I'm always going to be poor. Like, oh, you have to like, oh my gosh, like, okay, life doesn't suck. Like, I'm not always going to be poor. Like, you have to catch it right then and then say your affirmation or do whatever it is you need to do. The world is not against me, you know, and change that. Because yeah, if you just keep living in that, you are what you attract.
Yes. Yes.
And so if you want to keep attracting that or not attracting that, then just keep putting that out there. But it's
You're light beyond your years. I say that because, okay, so we have this big age difference between us.
Right.
And I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I was where you're at, just eating this stuff up,
Okay.
just loving it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think what happens as we age, okay, is that you just kind of sometimes go, I'm just fucking tired. You do.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying a lot of people give up, but I think a lot of people give up.
Right.
And if you don't have something to look forward to in your life, and you don't have, whether it be small projects or something, going on dates,
Yeah.
trying to find that person, if you don't have something to look forward to, you do fall into
For
this,
sure.
that deep rut of what's a point?
Right. What is the point?
You know
And
what
if
I
you don't have
mean?
people around you
Mm-hmm.
that are in that same energy field of like lifting up, then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you fall. I mean, there was a woman there who I think she had said she and her partner, her husband, they had been married for 35 years. She went to this last year and they went together to work on their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
She was back this year because in between that
Alone.
time, yeah, because
Did they
she's
break up?
yeah, she's like we went home
Oh,
and she's like I decided that he wasn't the person for me. She's like after
wow.
35 years I was able to reflect and to realize that like I do still want more for my life. I do that, all of these things and he didn't. And so she was like
People grow apart too.
right. And she's like I didn't want to stay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she's crying and she's telling us this story, and like you can feel like that would be fucking scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what you had said a couple weeks ago when we were talking about dating.
Mm-hmm.
It's like imagine being that age with someone for 35 years. You've had kids, you've raised this family, you come to this thing where you think you're going to work together, and then you leave and you find out that that person actually truly has zero desire, and I'm obviously summarizing,
Right.
zero desire to do that, but like for your life, you're not done.
Right.
And so your choice is pedestal myself and live my best life, or stay at this person's low vibration kind of and just know that I'm actually still meant for more, or there's more out there for me, but I'm choosing to play small.
Usually that happens when they have kids,
Yeah.
and they're like, I'm just going to stay together for the
Right.
kids. They may say they're going to stay together for the kids, but maybe they're just, like you said, they're too complacent. I
Right.
don't want to say too lazy, but all these different things that they're just like, oh, I'm too old. There's nothing out there for me. I don't want to change. I don't
Yeah.
want to change.
Right.
A lot of people, as they get older, they feel it's too late to
Yeah.
change.
It's
And
not
it's
too late.
never too
It's
late to
not too late.
change.
It's never too late to change.
And the change is hard.
Yeah.
The change is very hard. It's very challenging. And I think that, I did hear I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was about, of course, healthy diets,
Mm-hmm.
And what they said is, they said, take 30 days and literally become a fanatic
Right.
about it for 30
Yes.
days. As hard as it
Yeah.
may sound, but after that 30 days is what's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine it's the same thing in just your life in general. If
Mm-hmm.
you do want to, and yes, it's hard, and yes, therapy is great, but weekends like that,
Right.
I know you say it's not a workshop, but it's kind of like a little workshop.
It definitely was
a
kind of
little
like a
bump
workshop.
kind
Yeah.
of thing, and it
I mean,
makes
you're
you think.
learning, you're around the people, you're sharing. So it's like you're getting the education piece. Then we did really intense breath work at the end, like every evening, we would
Mm-hmm.
go through this thing. So you were really kind of going through some of the stuff maybe that you had thought about during the day or that you had shared, whatever. And I think to what you had said about the change is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would challenge someone to like think about this example. Like if you are broke, we'll just use that word. If you don't have the income that you'd like to have and someone gave you, $5 million,
Mm-hmm.
would that be hard to would that change be hard? I don't fucking think so. Okay? I don't think it would be hard to go from making $50,000 to $80,000 a year to now all of a sudden you have $5 million and you're like, oh, I can live my life however I want.
Ashley,
I
how am I
don't
getting
think that change would be hard.
Where's my 5 million coming from?
It doesn't matter. You won the lottery. Like people are like, oh, change is hard. Is it? Because I think there's certain change that we would welcome. You would welcome being able to go to dinner whenever you wanted and buy whatever clothes you wanted. I don't think you'd be like, oh, it's
Okay,
so hard to spend this
what
money.
you're saying is the words change is hard.
Yeah.
But you have to put that you have to put that on a certain example. So yeah, I see what you're saying. So if it's hard and it's something that you don't want to do, that's hard.
Correct.
If something is handed to you and you change right away, that's not hard.
Correct.
I see what you're saying.
Yes. And so people don't want, my experience in both the health side and like the personal side, people don't usually want to do the hard work. So to your point about the 30 days, yeah, could the 30 days be hard? It's 30 fucking days. Okay. That is a drop in a bucket compared to the year that you're going to live or the years that you have already stacked up. If you can't give me 30 days of anything, saving money, going to bed early, reading a book, whatever it is, drinking more water, like if you can't do 30 days, we got a whole other bunch of fucking issues.
Yes.
Like if you as a human being cannot to commit to something for 30 days, we call us. You need help. Yeah.
You're going to walk them through it.
Yeah. I'm going to be like, guys, like
Right.
it's, I mean, because it's not. And if you haven't been able to do anything like that for 30 days, I think it also says a lot about your willpower, your love for yourself. I mean, it's a direct relationship to how much you care about yourself. I truly think to what your level of health is in.
Okay. Agreed. 1,000.
think,
Yeah.
you know,
100% agreed.
If you're not getting up early, if you're not going for walks, if you're not going to bed,
I
like
can't get up early.
that's fine. But okay, maybe not early, but like if you are not prioritizing your health in some capacity,
Yes.
then you don't care about yourself. And that says something about you. Somewhere in the chain of life, you didn't think that you were worth it.
Okay. Well, that's where the trauma comes in.
Correct.
That's where the trauma comes
Right.
in. That's where like a weekend like this, it's not going to probably change that,
Right.
but it might address something. It might make you think about something a little bit differently. It might make you work on something a little bit differently. And it's baby steps. It's all about baby steps when you're
Totally.
working on yourself
Totally.
for the goals and things like that. But you're absolutely right. When you don't, that's a trauma that happens somewhere in your life. You might not even know where it's at, but sometimes you got to dig for it.
Yes. Yes.
I know that certain situations came up in my life that my friends have gone, well, what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, I guess that would have been trauma,
Right. Yes.
you know, in my 13-year-old
Right.
little mind.
Exactly.
Real quick before we go, small story. And this is, it is, but we were talking about trauma last night because I knew that we were going to do this podcast today. I'm like, have I really had trauma in my life? I mean, there were some things, but like, for instance, when my father, you know, I was 13 years old. My parents got divorced. My mom moved out, left me and my sister with my father. My father started dating my softball coach. Didn't like my softball coach. My softball coach was very masculine. I was like, this woman's gay. What are you doing with her? You know, kind of thing. But my point to this was, I remember her and I having an argument, and the argument turned into almost a wrestling match down our hallway.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And then when I jumped up out of it, I was distraught. I was 13, 14 years old. I was like, Dad, she hit me. And I'm thinking my dad's going to run to my rescue. My dad did not run to my rescue.
Yeah.
He was like, what'd you do? I was like, what do you mean, what did I do?
Bingo.
Why aren't you running to my rescue? You're my dad.
Right.
So at that point in time, I made a decision, I believe, you know, and I know that decision has impacted my life going forward,
Oh, for sure.
you know, but just things like that.
Yeah. But like, I mean, sit on that for a second because, and I said earlier, like, I think people think, oh, I haven't had trauma. I wasn't raped. I wasn't this. You know, my parents didn't beat me. They love me. Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying that has to be your trauma.
Right.
It could be that exact scenario that you said to where maybe something shifted and you were like, my dad didn't protect me. He wasn't there for me. Whatever the story is you told yourself.
I made
I'm
some
not good
story
enough.
up, man.
I have to get his validation. Whatever.
Validation.
Maybe if I'm stronger, maybe if I'm more like her, whatever it might have been that you said, you did that. And there was a woman, same thing at the conference, stood up. She even said, I came here not really knowing what I was getting into. I don't think I have trauma. And then she's like, but throughout the 2 days, we're on day 3 now. She's like, by today, she's like, I realized that I had a coach that I really, really looked up to and kind of never gave me the attention that I wanted. And one day he basically just told me that I was never going to amount to anything.
Oh, I've been told that many times when I was a child.
And so to her, she's thinking, I don't have any trauma. But then as she's coming to this thing and she's unpacking all of this, she's like, wait, I actually do. Because she's like, now my whole entire life, I have been extremely competitive in my job, in my industry, in my finances,
Because she's
in my
going to
school.
show
Correct.
everyone out there
Correct.
that she is worth it.
Correct.
And that she is
Yes.
the shit and above board.
And what's interesting is that can happen and it can go the complete opposite. You can also have the people that are told that and they believe that.
Yes.
And they say, you're right, I will never amount to anything. I am a loser. I am a failure. And they take that and they run with that story for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
And they don't do anything.
No.
So it's like they're both trauma, but they can totally lead to both two different outcomes. And it's again, I just think everybody can just do more inner work on themselves, get to know themselves, think about things. And then, yeah, like you said, maybe you're able to look back and or you can share with your partner, hey, this is a trigger for me because when I feel blah, 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 it actually reminds me of this time when the blah, blah happened. So can we, whatever it might be.
Right.
And you navigate that instead of just being like, oh, I'm so defensive. And it's like, well, why are you so defensive? Because I just the way that I am. It's like, well.
Yeah. And as you get older, it gets harder and harder. So
Correct.
Great podcast episode. We could sit and talk about
All
this
day.
forever. But
Yeah.
I think what we want to do here is share with you these stories so that you realize that it's not a private rainstorm, that we all have these triggers, these traumas, throughout our life. But it's when you step back and start working on them and recognize them and realize them that you can move forward in your life. And actually, if it is, make you stronger, make you, happier, whatever it may be in your life. But yes, you have to sit down and really unpack some of these things. I know I have not unpacked my suitcase for a very long time. I unpacked it when I was in my 20s and 30s, and then I just kind of put it in and put it back underneath the bed and went, okay, well, I'm done with that for a while.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that some of our stories that we share with you, that it will actually maybe, relate to you.
Yeah.
And you can go, okay, wait a minute, I'm not fucked up. I'm not crazy. I'm not, everybody has these feelings and these things that they go through in their lives, whether it be small traumas, large traumas.
Right.
But it's a matter of how do you deal with them?
Right.
So I think it's a great thing that we get to share things like this with people.
I love it. Yeah.
Any ending note?
I don't know. I think my ending note would just be if this resonates with you, or if you feel like, oh yeah, maybe I do want to know more, or maybe you feel like you don't have people in your life that you can have these conversations with. I think that can be hard. To find people to be vulnerable with. You can look and go to things like this. You can even just listen to podcasts. You can kind of do your own little inward journey, maybe before you're ready to start outwardly speaking about it. You can journal about it, just write it down and just tell the story. And you might, same with your thing. You might be writing about your dad in the hallway and then it's like, oh, wow. And you can just process it. But when we keep it so bottled up, it kind of becomes like a cancer within us.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can't live your best life. And that's all we want for you.
It's all we want for you is to live your best life. All right, Ashley, that's it.
That was good, Lori.
I loved it.
Okay, see you
Until next time.